The battlefield stretched across the void of space, a graveyard of shattered warships and drifting corpses. The remnants of the Coalition fleet, what was left of the once mighty alliance of alien species, fought desperately against the relentless forces of the Dominion. The Dominion had come from the outer reaches of the galaxy, an empire of cold, calculating conquerors who sought only subjugation or extermination. Humanity had not been part of the original war. The other species had ignored them, considering them a backwater civilization, too young to be of any real consequence. But now, as the Dominion's massive dreadnoughts loomed over the last strongholds of resistance, a new force arrived. The human warship Indomitable emerged from the darkness of space, its hull gleaming under the twin suns of the battlefield. It wasn't just a ship, it was a declaration. Humanity had come, and they were here to change the tide. For a moment, everything stopped. The Dominion's war machines hesitated, their artificial minds processing the sudden, unexpected arrival. The battered Coalition forces, broken and scattered, could hardly believe their sensors. It wasn't just a ship. It was something monstrous, something impossible. The Indomitable wasn't like the sleek, organic designs of the alien fleets. It was a beast of steel, covered in battle scars, bristling with weapons that had no place in the delicate dances of interstellar warfare. Humanity had not mastered the energy-based weaponry of the galaxy. Instead, they had perfected something far more terrifying: kinetic devastation. The first shot from the Indomitable shattered a Dominion battlecruiser in an instant. It wasn't a pulse weapon, nor a particle beam. It was a mass driver slug moving so fast that shields barely registered its existence before impact. The enemy ship didn't explode in a blaze of fire. It simply ceased to exist, torn apart by sheer force. A second shot followed, then a third. The Dominion, for the first time in recorded history, hesitated. Their perfect, calculated conquest had never accounted for a species that would throw aside diplomacy and battle tactics in favor of sheer, overwhelming brutality. And then, humanity did what no one expected. They charged. The Indomitable surged forward, engines roaring as it closed the gap with the Dominion's command ship. The smaller vessels in its wake followed, human-made warships pushing deep into enemy lines with reckless abandon. The Coalition forces, stunned but desperate, rallied behind them. The silent battlefield erupted into chaos once more. The Dominion's fleet scrambled to react, but they were not prepared for this kind of war. Their strategies had been honed over centuries, perfected against species that valued efficiency and precision. Humanity, however, was a different beast entirely. They did not fight with cold calculations. They fought with fury. The Indomitable barreled forward, its hull absorbing glancing blows from plasma lances and energy beams. Dominion gunners, trained to anticipate maneuverable, shield-reliant warships, found themselves helpless against the sheer mass and momentum of the human vessel. Inside the bridge, Admiral Ethan Graves stood firm, his fingers wrapped tightly around the railing as the ship trembled under enemy fire. His officers moved like a well-oiled machine, relaying damage reports, issuing firing solutions, and coordinating with the rest of the human fleet. "Status on the main railgun?" Graves barked. "Recharging, sir. Another 30 seconds." Graves watched as the Dominion fleet reorganized, their command ship falling back while smaller vessels rushed forward to form a defensive screen. They were trying to slow the Indomitable, to buy time for their flagship to escape. "Not today," Graves muttered. He turned to his tactical officer. "Target their formation with coilgun batteries. Shred them." A heartbeat later, the ship's secondary weapons came to life. Thousands of high-velocity projectiles ripped through the enemy ranks, tearing apart Dominion warships like paper. Unlike the delicate, energy-based weapons used by the rest of the galaxy, humanity's guns relied on raw kinetic force. Slug after slug of tungsten and depleted uranium traveling at hypersonic speeds. Alien shields, designed to counter plasma and laser fire, proved nearly useless. Their hulls, built to withstand energy dispersal, crumpled under the relentless barrage. The battlefield became a graveyard. The Dominion's fleet, once an unstoppable force, wavered, and then the final blow came. "Railgun charged!" "Lock onto their command ship," Graves ordered. The targeting system locked onto the Dominion's flagship, a massive, crescent-shaped vessel twice the size of the Indomitable. It had been coordinating the entire invasion, a fortress among the stars. Now it was in humanity's sights. Fire, a single titanic slug, launched from the Indomitable's main railgun, traveling so fast it created a visible shockwave in the vacuum of space. The Dominion's command ship had shields, armor, and layers of defensive technology designed to counter energy-based threats. None of it mattered. The slug struck the vessel at its center, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then, the flagship split apart, torn in two by the sheer force of impact. A second later, its core detonated, sending a wave of fire and debris across the battlefield. Silence followed. And then, for the first time in history, the Dominion ran. The remaining enemy warships, once an unbreakable force, broke formation and fled. The unstoppable tide of conquest had been shattered. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Graves exhaled slowly. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. Humanity had made its entrance onto the galactic stage, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The silence that followed was eerie. The once chaotic battlefield, filled with the sounds of destruction and dying warships, had settled into an unnatural calm. Wreckage drifted in the void, twisted remains of Dominion vessels, shattered fragments of coalition ships, and the still-burning husks of those who had not been fortunate enough to survive. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Graves stood motionless, watching as the last remnants of the Dominion fleet disappeared into the abyss of space. The enemy had run. It was a sight that no one in the galaxy had ever witnessed. The Dominion had never retreated. Never once had they acknowledged defeat. Until now. A voice broke the silence. "Sir, incoming transmission from the Coalition fleet." Graves exhaled and nodded. "Put it through." The holo display flickered to life, revealing the image of an alien commander. His violet-hued skin was bruised, his military uniform torn, and his reptilian features bore the exhausted, desperate look of someone who had stared death in the face and lived. "This is General Koresh of the Zixan Republic," the alien said, his voice tinged with disbelief. "Human Admiral, we owe you our survival." Graves tilted his head slightly, studying the alien's expression. He had read the reports before the battle. The Coalition had dismissed humanity, had considered them irrelevant in the greater war. Now they were forced to see them as equals. "Don't thank us yet, General," Graves replied, his tone firm. "This was just one battle. The Dominion doesn't lose easily. They'll be back." Koresh's throat swelled slightly, the Zixan equivalent of a grimace. "Yes, but today they ran. They have never run before." Graves nodded. He had seen the moment when the Dominion's confidence had cracked, when their cold efficiency had failed against the sheer brutality of humanity's weapons. For centuries, the Dominion had waged war like a game of chess, moving pieces with precision, calculating every action. Humanity didn't play chess. Humanity flipped the board and set the table on fire. Another officer spoke up from the bridge. "Sir, picking up distress signals. Survivors from the battle." Graves straightened. "How many?" "Hundreds of ships, coalition vessels, escape pods, even some Dominion defectors." The Admiral's brow furrowed at that. Defectors? Yes, sir. We're detecting a small group of Dominion vessels that powered down their weapons and are transmitting surrender signals. That was new. The Dominion didn't surrender either. Something had changed. Graves turned back to Koresh. Looks like your war just took a turn. Koresh's expression darkened. Perhaps. But the Dominion will never allow this humiliation to stand. They will return, and next time, they will not underestimate you. Graves smirked. Let them come. As the coalition forces began recovery operations, the Indomitable moved among the wreckage, gathering survivors and assessing the damage. Across the battlefield, the remaining human warships relayed messages to their command, transmitting the news across the stars. The Dominion had fled. Humanity had arrived. And the war was only beginning. The after-battle operations continued for hours. Human and coalition ships moved carefully through the wreckage, searching for survivors, salvaging what they could, and putting down any Dominion forces that still refused to surrender. It was a grim task, but necessary. The battlefield had to be secured before the Dominion could return in force. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Graves observed the tactical readouts. The ship had sustained damage, but nothing critical. Their weapon systems were already cycling for a full reload, and their engines had survived the battle with only minor strain. They were ready to fight again at a moment's notice. The holo display shimmered, revealing the stern face of Fleet Admiral Diana Voss, the highest-ranking officer in the United Terran Navy. Her silver hair was cut short, and her piercing eyes scanned Graves with the intensity of someone who had fought too many wars to tolerate nonsense. "Admiral Graves," she said without preamble, "we received your battle report. The entire Dominion fleet, routed?" Graves nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Their command ship is destroyed, and the surviving Dominion vessels retreated from the system. We've secured the battlefield and are recovering coalition survivors as we speak." Voss exhaled slowly. "I have to admit, I didn't expect them to run. The Dominion doesn't break formation. Ever." "They do now," Graves said simply. Voss studied him for a moment. "Word is already spreading. The other species in the galaxy are in shock. Some are celebrating, others are panicking. The Coalition is already requesting emergency meetings, and the Dominion, well, we don't know what they're planning yet." "They'll be back," Graves said without hesitation. "We wounded them, humiliated them. They'll want revenge." Voss nodded. "Agreed. That's why I'm issuing new orders." Graves straightened. "Orders, ma'am?" "The Dominion is going to retaliate, and when they do, they'll come in force. We can't wait for that to happen on their terms. The United Terran Navy is officially entering this war, and we are going on the offensive." Graves allowed himself a small smirk. "About damn time." Voss's expression remained grim. "You're to hold this sector and establish a forward base. More ships are en route to reinforce you, and we're preparing an expeditionary fleet to strike at Dominion-controlled space." Graves nodded. "Understood. We'll be ready." The Admiral leaned forward. "Graves, you just made history. The Dominion knows fear now. Let's make sure they never forget it." The transmission cut out. Graves turned back to his crew. The bridge was silent, everyone absorbing the weight of what had just happened. They had done more than win a battle today. They had changed the course of an entire war. "All right, people," Graves said, straightening his uniform. "You heard the Admiral. We're not just here to survive. We're here to win." Around him, his officers nodded, their faces set with determination. The Indomitable turned toward the wreckage-strewn battlefield, its weapons charging once more. This was just the beginning. Humanity had drawn blood. Now they were coming for the kill. The days following the battle were filled with ceaseless activity. The human fleet, along with what remained of the coalition forces, worked tirelessly to establish a forward operating base. Wreckage from the battlefield was repurposed into defensive platforms, automated turrets, and shield generators. Humanity wasn't just holding the line, they were digging in. The Dominion's retreat had sent shockwaves across the galaxy. The Coalition, a fractured alliance of alien species that had been on the verge of collapse, was suddenly looking to humanity for leadership. Some welcomed them as saviors. Others, more cautious, saw them as a new power rising from the ashes of war, one that might be just as dangerous as the Dominion. Admiral Graves sat in the command room of the Indomitable, studying a holographic projection of the sector. The war was far from over. The Dominion had lost one battle, but they controlled hundreds of systems. Humanity had sent a message, but the response would come soon enough. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the comms officer. "Sir, we have incoming vessels. 3 ships unidentified." Graves frowned. "Show me." The holographic display flickered, revealing 3 ships approaching from deep space. They were small, heavily damaged, and transmitting no weapons signatures. Not Dominion, not Coalition, something else. "Open a channel," Graves ordered. A moment later, a voice crackled through the speakers. It was weak, but unmistakably alien. "This is Commander Reltan of the Vicari Remnant. We seek asylum." Graves exchanged a glance with his officers. The Vicari were a name he recognized. Once a proud species, they had been among the first to fall when the Dominion began its conquest. It was believed they had been wiped out entirely. Yet here they were, alive and desperate. "Commander Reltan, this is Admiral Ethan Graves of the United Terran Navy," he replied. "You'll be safe here. Dock with our station. We'll provide medical assistance." The voice hesitated, then whispered, "You don't understand. The Dominion. They're not just retreating, they're regrouping, and they're coming back with something far worse." Graves stiffened. "Explain." There was silence for a moment. Then Reltan's voice returned, filled with dread. "They've awakened the Harbinger." A chill ran through the room. Graves had never heard that name before, but the way the alien spoke it, the sheer fear in his voice, was enough to send a clear message. The Dominion was about to strike back, and this time they weren't coming alone. Graves felt the weight of the words settle over the bridge like a suffocating fog. The Harbinger. It wasn't a name that appeared in any of humanity's war intelligence or intercepted Dominion communications. But the way Reltan had spoken it, with dread, with absolute terror, made one thing clear. Whatever it was bad. He turned to his officers. "Get that ship docked and secure. I want Reltan in the briefing room as soon as he's stable." "Aye, sir." Graves exhaled and ran a hand over his face. The Dominion had lost a battle, but he had never been foolish enough to believe they would simply retreat forever. He had expected them to return with a larger fleet, better tactics, maybe a new superweapon. But the way Reltan had spoken, this wasn't just about numbers or firepower. This was something else. An hour later, inside the Indomitable's war room, Reltan sat across from Graves. He was thin, his once regal Vicari uniform tattered and stained with dried blood. His 4 dark eyes, common among his species, darted around the room as if expecting something to strike him down at any moment. He was exhausted, haunted. Graves leaned forward. "Tell me everything." Reltan swallowed hard. "I was there when the Dominion took my world," he began, voice shaking. "We fought. We resisted, and they burned us to the ground. I watched my people die, our cities in flames, our warships falling from the sky. I watched them erase us." He paused, his eyes hollow. "And then I saw something worse." Graves remained silent, letting the alien speak. The Dominion was searching for something. Not just conquest, not just war. They were looking for something buried deep beneath our planet's surface, something ancient. Graves frowned. Ancient, Reltan nodded. They found it. A structure, black as the void. A tomb, perhaps, or something worse. I do not know what lay inside, only that the moment they unearthed it, everything changed. He shuddered. The Dominion fleet stopped fighting us. Their ships ceased fire. Their commanders ignored our last attempts to surrender. Instead, they activated a massive excavation effort. They pulled something from the depths, and when they did, we heard it. Graves narrowed his eyes. Heard what? Reltan's voice dropped to a whisper. A voice. A sound that wasn't a sound. A whisper in our minds, cold and endless. It was ancient, older than the Dominion, older than any of us. It spoke to them, and they worshipped it. The room fell silent. Even the seasoned officers, men and women who had faced the horrors of war, seemed unsettled. Graves folded his arms. What happened after that? Reltan's breathing quickened. I don't know. I ran. What few of my people remained, we stole ships, fled into the darkness of space, but we saw something as we left. The Dominion began to change. His 4 eyes locked onto Graves, full of horror. They are no longer what they were. They are no longer just an empire. They are something else now. Something worse. Graves processed the words carefully. This wasn't just another military counterattack. This was something unnatural. Do you have any idea what the Harbinger is? He asked finally. Reltan hesitated. Then, barely above a whisper, he said, I do not know what it is. I only know what the old legends call it. He swallowed. The end that walks. Graves met the alien's gaze and saw something he did not expect. Hopelessness. But humanity did not believe in hopelessness. The Dominion had made one fatal mistake. They had shown fear, and fear was something humanity knew how to exploit. Graves rose from his seat, his expression hard. Then we stop it. Whatever this Harbinger is, we put it back in the ground. Reltan let out a dry, humorless laugh. You don't understand, human. If the Harbinger has awakened, there is no stopping it. Graves smirked. Then it's a good thing humanity doesn't believe in impossible fights. He turned to his officers. Prepare the fleet. We're not waiting for the Dominion's next move. The Indomitable was going to war. Again. And this time, they weren't just fighting an empire. They were fighting something far worse. The Indomitable moved through the void like a predator hunting in the dark. Behind it, the growing human fleet followed, warships newly arrived from Earth reinforcing the battle-hardened vanguard. Coalition ships, hesitant at first, had begun integrating into the formation. Some out of desperation. Others because, for the first time in history, the Dominion had shown fear. Admiral Graves stood on the bridge, watching the vastness of space stretch out before them. Their destination, the last known coordinates of the Vekari homeworld, now an abandoned graveyard under Dominion control. Reltan stood beside him, still visibly shaken. You are making a mistake. Graves didn't look at him. We've made worse. The Vekari survivor exhaled. You don't understand. The Harbinger isn't a weapon. It isn't something you can simply destroy. If it's awake, if the Dominion has truly become its servant, then the war you think you're fighting is already lost. Graves finally turned, his gaze hard. Humanity has a long history of winning wars we weren't supposed to. Reltan shook his head. Then you do not yet know what you are facing. The moment he spoke, the warning sirens blared. Multiple contacts on sensors, the tactical officer called out. They just appeared out of nowhere. Graves snapped his attention to the display. At first he thought it was an error. Then he saw the formations. Dominion warships, dozens of them, emerging from the void like phantoms. No jump signatures, no prior detection. Just there. A cold realization crept over him. They weren't hiding, he murmured. They were waiting. Reltan paled. You need to leave. Now. But it was already too late. The Dominion fleet did not hail them, did not posture, did not send demands. Instead, they moved in complete, terrifying silence. And then, the Dominion flagship, a massive, grotesquely reshaped version of its former design, transmitted a single message. A voice, hollow and wrong, seeped into the comms. It wasn't Dominion. It wasn't anything Graves had ever heard before. We see you, little ones. The crew stiffened as the voice slithered through the speakers, cold and ancient. It was not a voice meant for mortal ears. Your time is at an end. The void calls. Then, the enemy fleet opened fire. The bridge of the Indomitable erupted into chaos. Evasive maneuvers! Return fire! Graves barked, gripping the command railing as the ship shook from the first wave of incoming fire. The Dominion ships were different. Their sleek, methodical designs were gone. Now they were twisted, unnatural. Their hulls pulsed with a dark energy that shouldn't exist, their weapons striking with an erratic, almost organic intensity. It wasn't just war, it was hunger. The first of the human warships, the Dauntless, took a direct hit from one of the enemy's strange new weapons. Its shields collapsed instantly, and instead of the usual explosion, something else happened. Its hull withered. It was as if time itself had been drained from the metal, reducing it to a crumbling, rusted corpse of a ship in seconds. The crew barely had time to scream before it was gone. Graves clenched his jaw. "What in the hell are we fighting?" Reltan whispered, voice hollow. "The end that walks." But there was no time for fear. Graves turned to his officers. "New plan. We punch a hole straight through their line and get to the planet. If the Harbinger is there, we find it and kill it." The bridge was silent for a heartbeat. Then his tactical officer gave a sharp nod. "Aye, sir." The Indomitable surged forward, its massive railguns lighting up the void. Kinetic slugs, each the size of a dropship, tore through the Dominion vessels with relentless force. But for every ship they destroyed, more took its place. "Fleet is taking heavy losses." Graves set his jaw. "We press forward." As the Indomitable carved through the chaos, the planet finally came into view. And that was when they saw it. A monolith. It stretched across the entire surface of the Vicari homeworld, an impossible structure of black stone and pulsing veins of something alive. The Harbinger was no mere entity. It was becoming the planet itself. And it was waiting for them. The voice returned, filling the comms, the screens, the very air. "Come forward, little ones. We have waited so long for you." Graves exhaled sharply. Then he grinned. "Good," he muttered. "I hate being ignored." The Indomitable charged forward. The Indomitable roared toward the surface of the corrupted world, cutting through the Dominion fleet like a warhammer smashing glass. The remaining human warships followed, forming a desperate wedge through the enemy lines, kinetic slugs and missile barrages tearing apart the twisted alien vessels in their path. But the Dominion wasn't fighting like before. There was no strategy, no formation, only madness. Their ships moved erratically, jerking and twisting like puppets on invisible strings. Some ignored direct hits that should have obliterated them, continuing to fight even as their hulls were torn apart. Others turned on their own, ramming into fellow Dominion vessels in suicidal frenzy. Whatever the Harbinger had done to them, they were no longer a fleet. They were something else. On the Indomitable's bridge, Graves kept his focus locked on the looming planet. The monolith on its surface pulsed with a sickly crimson light, the stone shifting in unnatural ways. It wasn't just a structure. It was alive. "We need to land," Graves said. "Get me a strike team." Reltan's 4 eyes widened in horror. "You cannot set foot on that world. It is tainted." Graves glanced at him. "And if we don't stop it here, how long before it reaches another world? Earth? Your home?" Reltan hesitated. Then, with a slow, defeated nod, he said, "Then we go together." Minutes later, the Indomitable's hangar was a flurry of motion. Marines suited up, exo-rifles locking into place. Combat walkers stomped into deployment bays. The strike team assembled, their armor gleaming under the red emergency lights. Graves stood at the head of the team, helmet in one hand, pistol in the other. "Listen up," he said, voice carrying across the hangar. "We don't know what's waiting for us down there, but I'll tell you this. We didn't come all this way to back down now. The Dominion thought they could break us. The Harbinger thinks it's something to fear." He locked his helmet into place. "It's about to learn what we fear." The strike team moved into their dropships. The bay doors groaned open, revealing the hellscape below. The corrupted world pulsed with a sickly, blood-red glow, the surface shifting like something breathing beneath the stone. The dropships launched. As they descended, the atmosphere churned unnaturally. The clouds weren't right. They twisted and folded in on themselves, forming grotesque patterns that flickered in and out of existence. The ground below wasn't static. It moved, reshaping itself in unnatural spirals. Then the voices started. "We see you." The words seeped through their comms, not as a transmission, but as a whisper inside their own helmets. "You do not belong," one of the Marines flinched. "Sir, I'm hearing—" "Do not fight." The Marine shuddered violently, gripping his helmet. Then he screamed. Graves turned just in time to see the man crumble, his body withered, his armor rusting away, flesh turning to dust in seconds. The seat where he had been was empty, as if he had never existed at all. The squad fell into stunned silence. Then, before anyone could react, the dropships hit the ground. The world was wrong. Graves had seen war zones before. Cities reduced to rubble, planets turned to wastelands. But this wasn't destruction. It was corruption. The ground beneath their boots was neither stone nor metal. It pulsed like flesh, veins of red light glowing beneath its surface. Towers of blackened rock twisted toward the sky, shifting and groaning as if aware of their presence. The Dominion had built nothing here. There were no command centers, no war camps. The Harbinger was the world now. "Move," Graves ordered, stepping forward, rifle raised. The squad advanced, keeping tight formations as they pressed deeper into the cursed landscape. Then they saw them. Dominion soldiers, once proud, once disciplined, stood motionless in the distance. Their armor was fused to their flesh, their limbs elongated and bent at unnatural angles. Their eyes, once filled with the cold determination of conquerors, now burned with crimson light. They didn't move, didn't breathe. Then the whispers came again. "Join us." The Dominion soldiers turned their heads all at once, and then they charged. "Open fire!" The Marines unloaded into the oncoming horde, kinetic rounds punching through twisted flesh. But the Dominion warriors did not fall like normal soldiers. They kept coming, their bodies refusing to die even as bullets tore through them. Graves fired his pistol, the explosive rounds blasting apart a soldier's head, only for the body to keep running another 5 steps before finally collapsing. The squad's rifles blazed. Grenades tore through the nightmarish enemy ranks. But for every soldier they put down, 2 more emerged from the shifting terrain. "They don't stop," one of the Marines shouted. Graves gritted his teeth. "Then we don't either!" He led the charge forward, gunfire roaring into the darkness. They had one objective now: reach the monolith, find the Harbinger, and kill it, no matter what it was. The battle was chaos. The Dominion soldiers, once disciplined and precise, had become mindless husks of war, charging without tactics, without fear, without the possibility of retreat. They moved like puppets, their twisted forms lurching toward the human strike team with an unnatural hunger. Graves fought with brutal efficiency, his pistol blasting apart heads, his combat knife sinking into malformed flesh when they got too close. Around him, the Marines held their line, rifles spitting fire into the endless wave of bodies. But no matter how many they cut down, more rose from the shifting ground, as if the planet itself was birthing new horrors. "Keep moving!" Graves bellowed. "We push to the monolith!" The squad advanced through the madness, boots pounding against the pulsing, vein-covered terrain. The closer they got to the massive structure, the more reality itself seemed to bend. Shadows moved in ways they shouldn't. The air felt thick, pressing against them like unseen hands trying to smother their existence, and the whispers grew louder. "Futile, you are dust, you are nothing." A Marine suddenly stopped in his tracks. "Sir, His scream was cut short as his body twisted, his limbs snapping into grotesque new angles. His armor crumbled away as his flesh withered before their eyes. In seconds, he was gone. Just another corpse absorbed by the corrupted ground. The squad barely had time to process it before something massive rose from the earth ahead. A Dominion war machine, once a towering mech of steel and plasma, had been reshaped. Its plating was gone, replaced by blackened bone, its mechanical limbs fused with organic muscle. The pilot inside had long since become part of the thing, his twisted face stretched across its torso, screaming in endless agony. Then it lunged. "Take it down!" Graves and his squad unleashed everything they had. Grenades, rockets, full rifle magazines. It wasn't a fight, it was sheer desperation. The creature charged through the gunfire, its massive claws swiping at the Marines. It crushed one of them in an instant, armor splintering like glass. Graves rolled beneath its next strike, planting a thermite charge against its exposed muscle. "Clear out!" The Marines scattered as the charge detonated. Fire consumed the abomination, its body flailing as the flames ate through both flesh and corrupted metal. It let out a scream that wasn't just sound. It was felt inside their minds, vibrating through their skulls. Then, finally, it collapsed. The squad stood there, breathing hard, their weapons shaking in their hands. "Jesus," someone muttered. Graves didn't stop. He turned toward the monolith, looming just ahead. "We finished this." They reached the monolith's base moments later. Up close, it was even worse than it had appeared from orbit. The surface was smooth yet breathing, a shifting mass of black stone and pulsing veins. The structure stretched high into the sky, seemingly endless, disappearing into the darkness above. At its center, a doorway yawned open, a tunnel into oblivion. Graves turned to Reltan. "What's inside?" The Vicari's 4 eyes were filled with pure horror. "Nothing that should ever be woken." Graves clenched his jaw. "Then let's put it back to sleep." He stepped forward, leading the squad into the darkness. The whispers followed them in. "You are too late." And somewhere deep inside, something stirred. The inside of the monolith was worse than any battlefield Graves had ever stepped foot on. The walls weren't made of stone or metal, but something alive. The surface rippled as they passed, faint veins of crimson light pulsing beneath a slick, black texture that seemed to drink in the dim glow of their helmets' lights. The air was heavy, thick with something that wasn't quite mist, but clung to their skin like a parasite. The deeper they went, the wrongness grew. Shadows stretched unnaturally, twisting along the walls in ways that defied physics. Their footsteps didn't echo. They were swallowed by the silence, as if the monolith itself refused to acknowledge their existence, and the whispers, "You should not be here. You do not belong. You are nothing." Graves tightened his grip on his rifle, forcing the words from his mind. They were close. He could feel it. "Stay sharp," he muttered. The squad pressed forward, weapons raised. They were trained for war, for blood and fire. But this? This wasn't war. This was something else. Then they found it. A vast chamber stretched before them, impossibly large. The architecture defied logic. Corridors spiraling into places that didn't exist, walls folding in on themselves. And at the center, a throne. It was massive, forged from the same blackened material as the monolith, pulsing with veins of eerie red light. It was both ancient and alive. And sitting atop it was the Harbinger. It was neither dominion nor anything else that should exist. Its form was humanoid yet wrong, twisted, elongated, draped in shifting black tendrils that moved as if whispering to each other. Its eyes, if they could be called that, were two burning voids of infinite darkness, peering into them, through them. It was waiting. Graves felt the weight of its gaze, a pressure inside his skull, not painful, but oppressive, as if his very existence was being measured. Then, for the first time, it spoke, not in whispers, not in malice, but in something far worse. Amusement. Ah, humanity. Its voice was deep, smooth, ancient beyond measure. It rumbled through their bones, resonating in the very molecules of their flesh. "You are persistent." Graves took a slow step forward, raising his weapon. "And you are in our way." The Harbinger tilted its head slightly. Then it laughed, a deep, unsettling sound, rich with something far worse than madness. "In your way?" It echoed. "No, child. You do not understand. I am not here to conquer." It leaned forward on its throne, the tendrils around it writhing. "I am here to watch." Graves didn't hesitate. "Light it up." The squad unleashed everything. Rifles, grenades, energy bursts, everything they had. The throne room became a storm of fire and destruction. The Harbinger vanished in the chaos, swallowed by the sheer force of humanity's wrath. For a brief, fleeting second, Graves allowed himself to believe it had worked. Then the dust settled. The Harbinger was still there, unharmed, unbothered, still smiling. Oh, how delightful. It rose from its throne, standing at its full height, its presence suffocating. The chamber around them trembled, the very monolith pulsing as if in anticipation. "Now, let me show you what it means to fight a god." The world collapsed. And the screaming began. The chamber erupted into a nightmare beyond comprehension. The Harbinger's form unraveled, not into flesh or metal, but into something incomprehensible, a mass of writhing darkness that swallowed light itself. The air twisted, reality buckling under its presence as tendrils lashed out, impossibly fast, impossibly everywhere. Graves barely had time to shout an order before the first Marine was taken. A tendril pierced through armor and flesh alike, lifting the soldier into the air. His scream was cut short as his body dissolved, not into blood or ash, but into nothingness, erased as if he had never existed. "Fall back!" Graves roared, firing his rifle into the swirling abyss where the Harbinger had stood. Bullets vanished into the void, useless against something that didn't obey the laws of matter. The squad scrambled, but the monolith itself turned against them. The walls pulsed and shifted, sealing the doorway behind them. The ground beneath their feet churned, splitting open to reveal jagged maws lined with teeth made of shadow. Another Marine vanished into one, his cries silenced instantly. Reltan grabbed Graves's arm, his 4 eyes wild with terror. "We cannot fight this! It is beyond—" Graves yanked free, his voice a growl. "We don't run!" The Harbinger's laughter echoed through the chamber, deep and omnipresent, shaking their bones. "Run! Oh no, little ones, there is no running. There is only me." The darkness surged forward, a tidal wave of annihilation. Graves saw 2 more of his squad vanish, one torn apart by tendrils, another simply gone, as if the Harbinger had unmade him with a thought. The squad's firepower, humanity's brutal defiance, meant nothing here. But Graves didn't stop. He pulled a plasma grenade from his belt, primed it, and hurled it into the heart of the storm. The explosion lit up the chamber in blinding white, briefly pushing back the darkness. The Harbinger's laughter faltered, just for a moment. That was enough. Graves turned to the last of his team, 3 Marines and Reltan. "We're not killing it," he said, voice steady despite the chaos. "But we can bury it." He pointed to the chamber's ceiling, where cracks had begun to form from the grenade's blast. "Overload your weapons. Bring this place down." The Marines didn't hesitate. They set their rifles to self-destruct, piling them at the base of the throne alongside every explosive they had left. Reltan, trembling but resolute, added his own Vicari plasma charge to the mix. The Harbinger's voice returned, no longer amused. "You think this will stop me?" Graves met its burning gaze as he set the final timer. But it'll slow you down." The darkness lunged. The explosives detonated. The chamber collapsed in a cataclysm of fire and stone. The monolith shuddered, its unnatural architecture crumbling inward as the blast tore through its core. The Harbinger's scream, a sound no mortal mind could fully grasp, echoed as the ceiling came down, burying the throne and its occupant beneath tons of corrupted rubble. Graves didn't see if it worked. The shockwave hurled him and the survivors backward, through the collapsing tunnel, out into the open air of the cursed world. They hit the ground hard, rolling across the pulsing terrain as the monolith imploded behind them. The red veins beneath the surface flickered, then dimmed. The whispers stopped. For a moment there was silence. Graves pushed himself to his feet, blood dripping from a gash on his forehead. Beside him, Reltan and the 2 remaining Marines struggled upright, staring at the ruin of the monolith. "Is it dead?" one of the Marines asked, voice shaking. Graves wiped the blood from his face, his eyes locked on the rubble. "No," he said quietly, "but it's trapped. For now." Reltan's voice was hollow. "It will rise again. It always does." Graves turned to him, his jaw set. "Then we'll be ready." Above, the Indomitable broke through the corrupted atmosphere, its engines roaring as it descended to extract them. The Dominion fleet, or what was left of it, had scattered, fleeing in disarray without their god to guide them. The dropship touched down, and the survivors boarded in silence. As they lifted off, Graves looked back at the ruined world below. The monolith was gone, reduced to a smoking crater, but he knew this wasn't the end. The Harbinger wasn't a foe they could kill with guns or bombs. It was something older, something eternal. Humanity had wounded it, defied it, but it would return. And when it did, they'd fight it again. Because that's what humanity did. They didn't kneel, they didn't break, they fought. The Indomitable rose into orbit, the remnants of the human fleet rallying around it. The war with the Dominion wasn't over. The Harbinger's shadow still loomed. But for now, humanity had won, and the galaxy would never forget it. Think harder. Explain the Harbinger ancient galactic threats.